Please give a warm welcome to editors Reid and Nathan Orloff. Thank you. In the spirit of the movie, you guys showed up and
saved the day.
Yeah, yeah. Just give me a record player. And
pretty amazing. The climax. How difficult was it, you guys, the last 50 minutes to calibrate the buildup? And I noticed rewatching it that you put in, every storyline is included in it.
Are you talking about sort of the montage that builds up at the end? Yeah, that was a very interesting, very difficult challenge because John Baptiste recorded 2 versions of that song of Nothing from Nothing on set. And in post, we sort of picked different takes of the different versions and they had to match a picture. And then we had these different storylines to integrate into the song and pick, all right, we're gonna hear these lyrics, we're not gonna hear some of these lyrics. And it was this incredibly delicate balance because you wanna laugh, you wanna hear the stuff about the golden shower. And you had to sort of tie up everything, and then you just wanted to give the audience the candy that they so rightly deserve about it after being anxious for 90 minutes. And you just wanted to have we wanted you to be able to have a smile for 3 minutes total, the entire song.
And how much time did it take? How many trials and errors until you got it just right?
Well, that was actually something we dialed a lot of that on set because we were talking about those moments and we were cutting it. And that stuff we needed, the little tiny pieces of this brick or that, we were able to dial in. But I think it took a few months after in post, but there were not big structural changes. It was kept being timing exact tweaks.
Which leads me, I was just fascinated watching the beginning all over again. How do you give every character enough room for us to take in who they are before you moved in? What was the secret sauce that you figure out eventually?
I feel like that's mostly in the writing. The script reads that way, where you're I just got enough of this person and I'm moving to this person. You're able to Gil and Jason were able to extract exactly what you need out of each character just to move on, and then the next time you visit them, they're already on to the next thread that they're trying to pull. And the interesting thing about this movie is they're trying to capture what 90 minutes feels like. So it's some people are not as deep as you might think. They're just spiraling about one concept, right? They're just thinking about this one thing right before they go on. So it was really fun with some of them because you just keep revisiting the same theme. With Garrett, you just kind of keep coming back to him, and he steeps deeper and deeper into his insecurity, and it's all there. And then the editing is just about, sometimes we'd shuffle some things around to give a little bit, tighten someone up a little bit closer to where we might have visited them before. I thought there would be a lot more of it, but there really isn't. It's so carefully woven in the screenplay. I
spoke to Jason before the premiere at Telluride, and he says, I've never worked in a movie where time itself is the villain. Was that the case for you guys in the editing?
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That clock in the movie was not something that was written. The title card that cuts to black and says 10 and cuts to 1, that's something we came up in post. And that really unlocked something in post-production for us because the flow of the film was, adding chaos on top of chaos on top of chaos. You became numb to it, and you needed a breath. You needed a second. In the same way they were talking about when you revisit characters, the hope was that the pacing and the edit was gonna be oh yeah, I wanna know what Garrett is up to now. Or, oh, no, great, I'm now seeing Gilda. You've forgotten, but you've left them for a second, and now you're just constantly coming back and then developing their character further. And the same things with time, is that we needed these breaths to establish where we are, how close we're, and also it's for comedy. We thought it was so funny the first time we screened it. We didn't expect that there'd be a laugh after 10:01, after the chaos of Andy Kaufman and everything. And then the absurdity of the next one, it's, oh my God, it's only been 12 minutes.
It gave us this ability to also build within whatever time we were going between each timestamp. You had the ability to start fresh and then ramp it all the way to this chaos that could break. And I think the film, if it didn't have it, it would be really hard to come off of those waves. And this just gave us like, Jason always talked about how time is the enemy of the film. And so we were thinking, how can we utilize clocks? We would just take anything that we'd shot, even use it in repetition, splice things in. But Nathan, I remember one day called me or texted me and he was like, I have a crazy idea, but what if the time just sits on the bottom corner like the whole film?
This might have been a 2 a.m. idea.
Yeah, and we were like, well, maybe that's not it, or maybe it just comes on like huge, and just takes the frame over once in a while. And we went to black. It not only achieved what we could do, where we could just build these like mini chapters, but then it allowed one of our favorite pieces of John's music, which is just this wood block that he just keeps ticking, which is unsettling, unnerving. And Jason loved the idea that every time we cut to the timestamp, it would tick to the next minute, and just showing you that we're not letting you, we still got our hands around your throat. Yeah. Time is still going, and I think it achieves that really well.
John Batiste, who did the score and also stars in the film, the score builds this tension. There's this constant percussion, and at times where we don't have the full band, we hear the percussion, the ticking. Was that something that helped you guys? Tell us, working with the score in the editing process.
John's score and having it and him recording it live on set was one of the biggest gifts editors I think could have possibly been given. I was on set in Atlanta, and me and Jason would show John an assembly on my laptop, and this would be after like John had done his scenes for the day, and then he'd go back in street clothes, and the band would come back, and they'd record on the same stage that they performed on, but they recorded our score. And he would show him a scene, and then they'd go, and he'd go, okay, yeah, I got it. And then he would go to different bandmates and be like, oh, you're gonna do this in an E flat, and you're gonna do this with this. And he would then, of course, John could also play any of the instruments. So he would just then all of a sudden get on the piano, and he would do these pieces that were like these big, long structural pieces that did this build. And then Jason and I would look at each other and be like, this is for the ending, or this is for this scene, and we'd get so excited. And then again, the clock one is really funny. It's like everyone's like kind of murmuring in between, and John just takes this wood block and goes. And the entire stage, and by the way, actors have who are wrapped are hanging out watching this for a free concert. Mm-hmm. Everyone just goes silent on the entire stage as John just looks for the right reverb, and he walks around the room. He's like ticking this wood block, and then Jason and I look at each other like, that's the clock. And this gift is like, we never had a temp score.
I think he and Jason just really understood that the music was such a vital character that they were exploring it like actors on stage, That's
great.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really, and the horns would have their own personality, and the drums would have their own personality, and it's like, we were able to go into the edit and then build a film and build the tension around the music that existed that we were going to finish the film with. So we weren't temping music that we would later try and find. We were using the pieces and the tension and the and like the warmth of the room, like how the sound was recorded in this film, and like all these different microphones. And so you were able to have this like space that it allowed too. So that in a film like this, where you're balancing music and dialogue so heavily, you could there was enough room in it that you could float it around, and just to have that foresight, I think for Jason and for John, is really like one of the unique pieces of this film.
At the top of the film, there are this long takes, uninterrupted, no editing, that eventually build into the illusion that we're seeing one long 90-minute take. Can you tell us about developing that?
It was a very unique and important discovery process. Obviously, the big oneer as you're meeting the characters for the first time on the 8th floor.
From the elevator. That is breathtaking.
And
that's one take. That is one take. Yeah. There's no stitches in that. That's all the way through Lauren going into the control room.
And we meet all the different characters.
Yeah. But then from then on, it was absolutely this interesting balance of trying this intercut that we did with the light boom falling, and you're meeting O'Donoghue, but cutting away, going to John. That was all part of a discovery process, and like you're talking about the music, all of this is on top of each other, which is obviously to me so indicative of that night. Everyone is working on top of each other. Everyone's improvising together. So having John's music and all this stuff is us working on top of each other. It was all
Yeah, and truly like talking about time being villain, joking about it for us, but it was a very accelerated post schedule.
Yes.
We had a cut of this movie, like I think we showed Jason a cut of this movie 2 weeks after you guys came back from set, and like a week.
Yeah.
And so what it did was it created like a lot of tension within our edit and how to build something that was like, I joke that I was actually working nights sometimes at the beginning of it because I was balancing another film, and I would come in at nights, and then I would cut these scenes, and my anxiety around surviving was like is in the movie because you could feel like I was like, I want to make this character feel what I'm feeling right now. And so you'd find these like beautiful pieces of, splicing, like the brick scene where we sort of crack Lauren's mind open a little bit and get more into his panic that he's experiencing. And Jason was just like, as we would start to uncover it, Jason's like, oh my God, it was like these beautiful gifts of like, this is what happens when he trusts the people that he hires, which is Jason's the best when it comes to that all around, from his actors to his score to us. And then through that tension that we were living in, it was like these like wonderful discoveries where like these things would come out of it. And I feel like that's in the film for the characters, these little moments that were shed from panic and trusting the process and letting it happen and then delivering what you do. That's what the film does, and that's what it was like behind the scenes.
Going back to that opening moment, that long take with the elevator where we start meeting people, there is a rhythm to it. And I noticed that it does set the pace for the rest of the film. Was that something that Jason spoke to you beforehand, that this is the rhythm in which we're going to see things?
You mean musically or just in the...
No, the visuals.
Just in the visuals, yeah.
So yeah, I was on set in Atlanta with Jason, and they would do whole days of rehearsal where actors had call time, camera people. I think sometimes they would do it on their iPhone, but it was all a choreography, and in hopefully the effort to make it seem like it's all chaos. But in order to accomplish chaos, you have to choreograph very precisely. And that was part of a conversation. And one of the things that like we pitched was like we needed to be able to go inside a 8H, like the first rehearsals that they were doing, like you just saw the door is supposed to be a tease, and I was like, oh, we really should go inside 8H and at least go under the bleachers and see it, because then we're going to need to know geographically when we're on with John Belushi in the next scene, where are we? So that was a discussion with all of us on what are the important things to see rhythmically and to set up the geography for the rest of the movie. Part of the discussion between Jason and us.
And I do want to follow up on something that you mentioned, is the bricks. The bricks obviously is a symbol throughout the film. Can you share with the audience what you guys discussed the bricks meant, and also in the editing, how much to show of the bricks as the process? I
think it originated from anything that felt percussive in the film. The bricks had... the bricks have a percussive element to how Leo is laying them down. And it's also funny. It's funny that they're trying, amongst all this madness, there's just a guy trying to lay like 500 bricks. And it's even questions like, why do we need to do this? We don't need to do this, but we're adding this extra tension on. And Lauren's even walking by it like, that's how far he's gotten? Like, okay. And so there's this percussive element, but in that scene, which was written and directed in a way that like, there's a sort of showdown between Carlin and O'Donoghue, and then, but these are things that we like kind of restructured in some ways because we actually paired Chevy and Milton with that to just really lend this feeling. Because I remember when we first put it together, we were like, we really need to feel like Lauren's at the point of breaking. We have to get that across. So we started pairing those scenes together, and then when we got to the bricks, it was him looking at it and realizing like, what am I doing? This is all happening. And then because we had this, sort of percussive layering that we can do, and this time as the villain, it was like, and these cue cards are stacked up that are not resolved. Like all these, it was like a way to take the rhythm of the bricks and realize that they are like a painful rhythm. Like that rhythm it hurts. And the sound of the scraping and the pounding is like, it's unsettling, and I think it just lends to the anxiety.
And it's also an opportunity in those moments to cut to the things that, like you're saying, are like the metaphor, using the percussive elements to flash cut to the cards, to Lauren seeing his future in the producer or director upstairs that's incredibly unhappy with Rumpus Hour. And all these things are like the percussive elements of the bricks that allowed us to splice and have a lot of playfulness and fun.
Yeah, I mean, I love the symbol of it, the fact that this is ephemeral, but Lauren is saying, I'm here for the long run. You know, we're building a foundation for SNL.
It shows his conviction the whole time, right?
Yeah, no, it's extremely powerful. I'm curious about you speak about chaos, but how do you guys, from your vantage point, keep cohesive while, you know, creating the illusion of chaos as you're editing?
I mean, this is one of the things I think that is good about how Shane and I are different, and we bring different things to the table that I know Jason appreciates that are different about us. As I think I'd say that I'm more, my head sometimes making sure structurally things make sense, story-wise things make sense. In my head, as you're watching a movie, like even visually, like how I've cut other movies, to me you should be able to have a narrative in your head, like as if you're talking to like a very, you know, young child, explaining simply what is going on. And if you've lost that, you've lost the thread. It should be easy narratively to understand what's happening. But as you said, this chaos is incredibly important in this film, and that's something that I think Shane is, you know, incredibly good at, making something that is provocative and chaotic. And, you know, we would just chase each other and try things and try to like hammer down the emotion of a scene and when to slow down. And we would always be each other's first audience. And that's something that I've had a wonderful time working, you know, on this film with.
Jason decided to shoot in 16 millimeter as opposed to 35 or even digital. Was that a challenge for you guys, or?
No, that's not a challenge for us. We loved it. I mean, I love feeling transported to that time. So I think that's just aesthetically, when they talked about shooting it that way, that was thrilling. But it doesn't really create any challenges editorially.
Mm-hmm. And why did Jason wanted to shoot it in 16? That we, you know, we get this grainy quality to the visuals.
I think it's just authenticity. I think that's what he's going for. Not that everything was 16 at that time or looked grainy at that time or anything, but I think it's the way that it just. I think you believe the magic of it a little bit more when you feel like you're just watching something that feels sort of perfectly imperfect. You know, I think there's just an impression that film gives, especially 16, that breaks down the facade a little bit and allows you to just sort of like feel like a voyeur. I don't know. It's interesting. That's definitely a better answered question from Eric Steelberg and Jason, but I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it visually kind of glues a lot of the things together and puts everything in a single lens, for lack of a better word, but it sort of melds everything visually between the costumes and the sets and the lights and everything in terms of, like you said, transports you to another time and place. And I think that was, you know, incredibly critical. Because 35, I think the less grain of it all would be too pristine for what Jason would want for this.
Mm-hmm. So you have the perimeter of 90 minutes. You know, tell us about working with that constriction. We have to deliver a product within 90 minutes and fulfill all of the needs of the script and the story.
I mean, a good thing is like the script was really good. Yeah.
But was the script written specifically, we're going to deliver everything in 90 minutes?
That was the idea. I mean, yeah. There were times where we talked about. I mean, the film is almost pretty much 90 minutes up to when they get to, Wolverines. So it's pretty close to that. I mean, sometimes if you really wanted to check us, you'd be maybe like 4 minutes off of like a little mark.
There's also there's cross-cutting between when Lauren goes upstairs and it's happening at the same time.
Don't pay too much attention. But no, it's that to us, I think as editors who want it to be lean and want it to move and want it to be sharp, it's a great rule for us to, you know, work within the confines. It's not a challenge when the script is that tight, and there's not even really a lot on the cutting room floor. It's a very it's a tight film. It's a very tightly shot film. Like Jason says, there's no way that you can sort of have that perceived chaos without it being very carefully orchestrated. They did such a good job that you know, we had extra material to work with, but a lot of times we were even trying to find some things because we were using everything that we could.
It both was not a constraint. We weren't beholden to it, so the film just sort of found its natural timing and what felt appropriate. We listened to it. I mean,
And where were you guys editing as the film was shooting, or you wait?
yeah, I was in Atlanta cutting on my laptop. I was in a cubby, basically where Neil gets stoned, and they say Belushi, Belushi. Like that was right behind that door is where I was, like the entire time, just on my laptop, and it was a blast because there was times where I'd be like, oh, we'd love to get a shot of Lorne. Like the shot of Lorne when he's looking at the bricks was something we added later on. We're like, we really need to see Lorne like snap a little bit. And luckily, it's like the lighting they did all once at the beginning. Everyone's in the same costume 99% of the time. So being able to do reshoots or pickups was incredibly easy. So it was just like, oh, can I just grab B-cam and go into the control room and get this one person looking at the clock? And it's like, great, let's go do that. And so it was like on set, it was a gift in that way. The fact that it's all set on one night and no one does big costume changes, it was really useful.
And the whole set's built, right? So you can pick up and move somewhere and not have to build a whole wall out or do something, you know. So I was in LA, so I would be sort of the first audience who was objective to it, and Nathan and I would, you know, shoot some notes back and forth. He'd present some things to Jason, but yeah, that's how that went.
Well, speaking of gifts, thank you. You're a gift for having shown up and pinch hit for Jason.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
What a
Thank you
thrill.
for having us.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.